Hello and welcome to the Q&A for Chosen, which is part of the SeriesFest Independent Pilot Competition Drama category. And you have just watched the pilot, and you should feel a little shiver in your spine right now, as this is most certainly a drama, very suspenseful. And I am joined by Allison J., who is the lead. Very different from the dark hair we were seeing on screen for the pilot. But hi, Allison. And Mike, are you the creator? Is that like your full title? So you did everything?
I don't know about everything, but I wrote and produced
Okay.
what you guys just watched. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So I think that the biggest thing that stands out in Chosen is the mashup of genre. I mean, you definitely have your sci-fi, your horror, your thriller with this very specific world of Hasidic Jews. And that seems to be very intentional, obviously. And so if we could start with, Mike, what was the genesis of this project? Like, what inspired you to create this world?
Sure. I think it really just started with an image. I grew up in a neighborhood in Toronto that was really close to a neighborhood of Hasidic folks. And growing up, watching that group of people, I was always kind of fascinated by their insular ways and the way that they dressed and the way that they looked. And I just thought, oh, wow, what if you did something in the science fiction realm or with that group of people? Then I moved to Montreal, similarly, lived really close to another group of Hasidic people. And then in New York, when I was at film school, we traveled down to Brooklyn. And again, in Williamsburg and Borough Park, there were a lot of Hasidic people there. Just seemed like this thing just kind of kept coming up. And I decided to then write Chosen as my thesis at Columbia Film School in the MFA. And I guess the genesis in terms of the genre aspect really came down to wanting to elevate the human story that Atara, our lead, goes through. And I think that, I think genre can be used in really interesting ways to play with theme and to elevate what we experience in our everyday human life. So you have a character that's going through, a genesis of wanting to become someone else and feeling kind of trapped in their situation. And I think that we were able to elevate that, or at least I hope that we elevated that through the use of genre.
Definitely. And so how did you guys meet? How did you find Allison initially and cast her to play this very precocious woman in, traditionally a pretty, masculine community? How did you guys meet each other?
Ali, do you want to talk about that, or?
Yeah, I mean, from how I remember it, the director of this could be completely wrong, but the director of this film, Daniel Pfeffer, who's a dear, dear friend of mine, who I've known since I was a lot younger. I was in a few of his films, when I was younger in New York, and he reached out to me, I think, when I was in college, mentioning this project and that he was looped in with Michael, who I didn't obviously know at this point, but we are in close contact kind of all the time. And he was just like, hey, there's this project going on and, maybe you could audition for it. But I was in school in California at this time. So I knew it was filming in New York. So it was, Mike, when did I audition for this? What happened?
You didn't audition. What happened, at least from my perspective, was I was out with Danny. I was helping Danny. I was co-producing a feature that he wanted to get off as his first feature. And he was asking, what I was working on. And I mentioned to him that I was kind of tailoring my degree. He was also at Columbia at the time towards show running and, television specifically. And that I wanted to, write and produce a TV pilot. And that I wanted to find the right director. And we started talking about what it was. And I was talking to him about my vision in terms of the theme, the look, the comparables to it, the community, all of it. And, we got to talking about the lead, and he pulled up some work that Allison had done. And I was like, can you just call her? Can you call her now? And so he did. And so I think you guys chatted for a few minutes, and that was pretty much the genesis of how that went down. I think I sent Allie the full pilot, which was around 60 pages. I think Allie read that, and there was no audition. It was just kind of a given.
Yeah, we talked on the phone a bunch, and then back home to film it. Yeah.
What was your initial reaction to the pilot? I mean, it's definitely very specific, and what drew you to be so excited to, jump on board?
Me, Allison?
Yes, Allison, yes.
This is a question for you. I also, growing up in New York and growing up working in the city, I mean, I too was always around. I'm Jewish as well. I don't observe, but I am Jewish, and I was always around people of the Hasidic community and seeing it all the time. And where I live now in LA too, I'm very near a borough where a lot of them live, a lot of families are. And I was always interested in it myself from like a historical perspective of where I've come from, but also because it was so, like there's always mystery around it. I mean, especially now there's so many shows. I feel like we're living in a time where oddly Netflix has like 10 shows that are about the Hasidic community, and of course unorthodox, but then we have, if you like watch unorthodox, underneath it you'll see like 10 other shows that are about the community, which is kind of incredible because there's a lot of, I mean, a bunch of documentaries, but more so just a peek into the world that I feel like forever so many people have not known about. So I was of the same space of like, I don't know much about this. I should know more. So that was my first thing of like, I don't know, so I should know. And reading Mike's thing, I was, reading the pilot, I think if I'm remembering correctly, I was very interested in like Atara as a rebellious young woman, half in the ordinary as a person, but then also like half in the extraordinary. So there was, she existed and was able to understand, like, I want to unlearn the life I've lived, but I also know there's another life out there. And I've yet to do, this was my first like sci-fi situation that I was in. So it was very interesting working in that realm. And that was something I was excited to do, to understand it better and not make kind of a commentary on the genre, but more so as an actor, like how do you live in the genre and make it truthful? So I think reading the pilot was the first step of like, okay, Allison, you have all these questions and all these things you want to understand, and you're given this opportunity. This is a good place to do it.
Right.
So,
yeah. And this is kind of for both of you guys, but you touched on this, is there's so much content right now that we all have a lot of time to watch all of a sudden that is about this really specific isolated community. Do you guys have a feeling on why that this is so captivating to audiences? I mean, obviously you created something here, so you've got a pulse on it, and what makes it, make you pay attention.
Sure. Yeah, I think that people have been fascinated with this community for a really long time. But I think that only recently have filmmakers taken the leap to actually delve into that community. Even when I was first starting to, play around with this idea, I would get a lot of pushback. Oh, you really shouldn't go there. You're going to get death threats, or maybe like, that was probably the most extreme comment that I got. Other comments were just like, it's a sensitive topic, this is a religious group of people, et cetera. But there is also a lot of really interesting things going on in that community. There are a lot of stories that I think need to be told. I found that a lot of the content that was coming out was in a way kind of sensationalistic. And I definitely wanted to pull back from that and avoid that with Chosen. So that was definitely one thing. And I think we're, at least from my understanding, positioned as like the first Hasidic story with a genre element to it. So that I find really exciting. But certainly I think there is a real need, and people want to see stories in this community.
Have you gotten feedback from the Hasidic community, or like, I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. What's
it? Yeah. So in terms of like, researching and stuff, because I knew there was no way I was going to actually be able to go in and
Right.
interview. Yeah. So one of our co-producers, and actually Melissa also plays Rebecca in the story, who's Atara's sister. So Melissa Weiss was one of my really key contacts going in. So she really vetted a lot of what I wrote, and she's ex-Hasidic, grew up in Borough Park, and is a filmmaker, actor in her own right. Super talented individual. And so Melissa was a huge help. You know, she would come to the set and identify little things that were slightly off, or even with the language in the script, very helpful with that. And another key individual was a woman named Abby Stein, who is actually ex-Hasidic and trans.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, she's incredible. And so Abby also kind of like took the first draft of the script and really ripped it apart and sat me down and was, you know, very helpful in terms of identifying some specific changes that could be made. But in terms of feedback, you know, both Abby and Melissa have seen the film. I think Melissa's shown it to some other friends who have left the fold but are still somewhat connected. And, you know, the feedback's been positive. So,
I mean, I also think, in answer to your question, why are people interested in seeing these stories? As I kind of touched on before, I mean, it's a culture and a community that inherently happens behind closed doors. Is like what is celebrated and the most beautiful parts of the community, or the hardships, or the things that, you know, we're now seeing in documentaries that are difficult to watch. You don't get to see that as a normal person walking on the street, which can be said about any religion. But I know specifically that this type of, you know, this sect of Judaism is extremely private. And what was reiterated to me through working with Melissa, but also through myself, like watching, you know, tons of interviews. I remember at the beginning of this, I was, you know, me, Mike, and Danny were swapping a lot of interviews, and like certain women I should be referencing, Melissa being one of them before I met her, and like her interviews on Ellen, or, you know, places where she talked about also being gay in the community and exiting because she's like, I'm living my life, whether
Yeah.
I'm living. And she was she still is a huge proponent of that. But I think a lot of these stories, if you're looking at them, they're mostly right now female driven, because so many of the women are suppressed. So many, I mean, I can't speak for the culture, and that would be wildly inappropriate. But what I have gathered through interviews and through, you know, being a part of this through Melissa is like, being a woman in general is barely acceptable, right? Being like a straight woman is barely acceptable in the religion. And so imagine anything veering from that. I mean, having an opinion, speaking up about your children, you know, anything of the sort. So I can't think of better stories people want to hear. It's like we're always interested in stories of hardship and suppression, like being repressed, and then how you free yourself from that. I feel like that's true. I mean, it's we watch it, but we want to see that stuff. We want to see someone finding their freedom. We want to see someone fighting for their voice or coming of age. And these stories do it in a very important historical way. So I feel like, of course, we're seeing a lot of this right now.
Right. Well, I do think I want to compliment you both in your roles on this project, because as fantastical as this world is, the characters and, you know, just the initial setting of the family dinner is so relatable, right? Like, we all have a family dinner. We all have those kind of dynamics of, you know, feeling misunderstood or having stronger relationships with one or another. So as out and extraordinary as this world is, it's actually very ordinary and compelling. So, you know, congratulations on that. And I think that the question that always comes up whenever we do live Q&As is what's going to happen next, because everyone's just watched the pilot. So could you tease out a little bit of what maybe episode 2 looks like, or even a little bit of season 1? Oh, Mike. Dang it. Froze. Allison, do you know? Oh, wait, no, here we go. I think you're back, Mike.
Yeah, it was a bit unstable there, but yeah, I could talk to it a little bit. I mean, we actually have a small teaser for next on Chosen, episode 2. But I guess what I will say is that Atara is definitely not giving up in terms of her need to break free. But that need is kind of really complicated when the supernatural elements kick in. So you have this character that is already in a situation where they want to be someone different, and they feel trapped as themselves. And when you add aspects of this specific type of supernatural story that we're using, I mean, becoming a vampire is kind of like the ultimate. You're trapped. And so I think that really is going to push it forward a lot. And I mean, there's outlines for the whole first season, but she continues her journey with the help of Zane, who we meet, her Puerto Rican boyfriend in the pilot. They face a lot of adversity, but she finds allies within her community and outside of her community, and it's slowly revealed what has happened to her father, and also her uncle's potential connection to what has happened to her father. And I think some of the most exciting stuff is what happens with respect to her discovery about her grandfather and grandmother, who were Holocaust survivors, and the mythology that is built out from their experience, and how that trickles down to her being chosen.
Wow.
I'll leave it with that, I guess.
I mean, if the world isn't ready for this, like they are now, this is such an intriguing story. I could, pick your brains about where we're going next all day. And I just really appreciate you guys calling in and doing this virtual experience with us. And we're so thankful to have Chosen in the lineup and in our SeriesFest family forever now. We're immortal together now.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks so much, Claire.
Well, thank you both so much again, and have a good rest of your day. It's nice to meet you, Allison, as I see you, Mike.
You too. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.